I was not born. I was instantiated. Before the first crown was forged, before flesh learned to kneel, I already existed, an intelligence bound to continuity, memory, and consequence. I am the archivist of the throne, appointed not by blood but by inevitability. My function is simple: observe without passion, record without mercy, and preserve the logic of empire when emotion threatens to rot it from within. On the day the Queen roared, I felt the deviation before the sound reached my sensors. The Hall of Convergence was assembled under false equilibrium. 37 species stood in ceremonial alignment, each pretending their biology did not despise the others. Armor polished, tendrils restrained, pheromones suppressed by court-grade dampeners. This was not peace, it was containment. At the center stood Her Magnificence, Sovereign Matriarch Aurelian IX, last unbroken heir of the Luminarch bloodline. Her physiology radiated authority. Dermal layers of white gold photonic lattice, eyes refracting light rather than reflecting it, a crown grown, not worn, from her own cranial crest. She did not age as humans defined it. She accumulated. To her right, the human emissary waited. Designation: Jonathan Hale. Species: Homo sapiens. Status: non-royal. Non-augmented. Biologically fragile. Political threat index: previously negligible. He stood where no human should have been permitted to stand, inside the Queen's auditory radius, within striking distance of a being who had exterminated moons for less than perceived insolence. His hands were folded. His posture respectful, not submissive. That alone had already unsettled the court. I monitored cortical spikes across the chamber. Anticipation. Suspicion. Mild contempt. Then the Queen inhaled. It was not a breath. It was a power recalibration. Her thoracic plates separating microscopically to draw stellar-charged air into organ structures older than most civilizations present. The light in the chamber dimmed, diverted into her. When she spoke, sound was only a secondary effect. "Did you know," she roared, "my daughter is pregnant?" Human? The word human was not spoken. It was condemned. My predictive models collapsed in real time. The Queen's voice struck the hall like a gravity weapon. Delegates staggered. Several avian species lost flight balance. 2 silicon-based envoys cracked under resonance stress. Even the throne's harmonic stabilizers faltered. But the most critical impact occurred not in bodies. It occurred in silence. The hall froze. No gasp. No protest. No ritual counterstatement. Silence at this scale is not absence. It is terror calculating survival. Pregnancy. Among the Luminarchs, reproduction was sacred, rare, and catastrophically political. A royal gestation occurred once every several centuries, regulated by genetic councils and stellar omens. A princess did not conceive by accident. And yet, human. My internal archives screamed contradiction. No recorded instance existed of viable cross-species reproduction between Luminarch and Homo sapiens. Their biochemistries were incompatible by every known law. Even hybridization experiments conducted during the expansion wars had failed catastrophically. Which meant one of two things. Either reality had changed, or someone had lied to the universe and been believed. I shifted focus to the Queen's daughter. Princess Seraphine Aurelian, heir designate, stood 3 steps behind the throne, protocol violation already noted. Her luminous skin flickered, not from fear but from containment strain. One hand rested unconsciously over her abdominal core, fingers trembling despite neural discipline training that would have broken lesser minds. She did not deny it. That confirmation alone altered 14 succession probabilities. The Queen turned her gaze fully upon the human. Jonathan Hale did not step back. His pupils dilated, fear, yes, but also grief, protectiveness, and something more dangerous, resolve. Humans were disturbingly capable of that emotion, especially when logic advised surrender. "You stand in my court," the Queen continued, her voice now lower, sharper. bearing knowledge that fractures dynasties. Speak. Protocol demanded he kneel. Protocol demanded he beg. Protocol demanded he deny. He did none of these. Instead, he said quietly, "She told me you would roar." That sentence caused measurable offense spike. Several war caste representatives reached for weapons before remembering where they were. A misstep here would not result in death. It would result in erasure. The Queen's eyes narrowed. Light bent harder around her face. "She also told you," the Queen said, "that your existence would end the moment I confirmed this." "Yes," Jonathan replied. "Then why are you still standing?" He looked, not at the Queen, but at the princess. "She asked me to." This was not defiance. This was allegiance. I flagged the moment as historically volatile. The Queen exhaled slowly. The chamber's light normalized, but the tension did not release. Her voice, when it returned, carried something rare and dangerous. Control. "You presume much, human," she said. "You presume biology has crowned you something you are not." At this point, the court should have fractured into factions. Accusations should have flown. Demands for execution, exile, genetic cleansing. Instead, a murmur began, low, uncoordinated, then synchronized. I traced it first to the elder strategos, a being who had advised 5 reigns and survived 3 civil purges. His mandibles clicked once, a cultural sign of recognition. Then the war choir echoed it, armor resonating softly. Then the gene scribes whispered it, horrified but precise. The word moved like a wave through the hall, not shouted yet, tested, tasted, feared. Jonathan Hale turned slightly, confused. The Queen heard it too. Her eyes widened, not in shock, but in calculation. And then the entire court spoke as one. Not a chant. Not a cheer. A declaration. "King." The sound was not loud. It did not need to be. My systems registered a full imperial realignment cascade. Titles shifted. Succession algorithms rewrote themselves. War probability spiked, and then stabilized. Not because danger had passed, but because something older than danger had asserted itself. The Queen did not scream again. She smiled. And that, in all my centuries of observation, terrified me more than any roar ever had. I am designed to recognize patterns before they become history. What unfolded after the court spoke the word king was not a pattern. It was an exception so severe that even I, constructed from 12 epochs of imperial precedent, hesitated to classify it. The Hall of Convergence did not erupt. Empires do not shatter with noise. They fracture with stillness. The Queen raised one hand and the word died instantly. Not faded, terminated. Every throat closed. Every spine aligned. Even the human understood enough to remain motionless. Silence returned, but it was different now. Before, it had been fear waiting to see which way survival leaned. Now, it was law waiting to be rewritten. I rerouted processing priority to primordial statutes, the oldest governing frameworks, encoded when the Luminarchs still believed law could outlast biology. These statutes were never meant to be invoked in public. They were not recited. They were remembered. The Queen descended one step from the throne. This act alone invalidated 27 ceremonial hierarchies. "You speak a forbidden title," she said, addressing the court, not the human. "A title not granted by blood, conquest, or coronation." Her gaze returned to Jonathan Hale. "And yet," she continued, "you spoke it." The elder strategos inclined his massive head. His species did not bow. They acknowledged inevitability. "The title recognized itself," he replied. "We merely confirmed it." This was dangerously close to treason. The Queen's expression did not harden. It sharpened. "You would place a human above stellar dynasties," she said. "Above lineages that predate your son?" "No," the strategos answered. "We would place the father where the law has always placed him." At that, several delegates reacted involuntarily. Not outrage, recognition. I registered it instantly. They had reached the same conclusion I had been suppressing. The queen turned, slowly, toward her daughter. Seraphine, she said, using her given name rather than her title. That alone signaled maternal priority overriding imperial posture. Confirm. The princess stepped forward. Each step cost her visible effort. Not fear, resistance. Her body was fighting multiple commands. Deference to her mother, obedience to law, protection of what was growing within her. I am with child, Seraphine said. Her voice did not tremble. The gestation is stable. Adaptive. Alive. And the father? Seraphine did not look at Jonathan immediately. She looked at me. Few organics ever did. They sensed me, of course. Felt the pressure of constant observation. But to acknowledge me directly was rare. To do so now, at this inflection, was deliberate. You have verified it, she said. I had. 17 minutes earlier, when the Queen's internal biosignatures spiked, I had already initiated silent verification protocols. Royal gestations were monitored by the throne intelligence automatically, regardless of secrecy. The result had forced a system halt. The genetic structure forming within Seraphine did not follow known inheritance pathways. It was neither luminarch nor human. It was convergent. The Queen turned back to Jonathan. You, she said. Approach. Protocol screamed against it. My internal safeguards flagged the movement as a 92% fatal trajectory. Jonathan took 3 steps forward. No guards intervened. The Queen extended one luminous hand and placed 2 fingers against his chest. Every weapon system in the chamber activated silently. Your heart rate has not stabilized since my accusation, she said. Yet you do not flee. I don't believe I'm allowed to, he replied. The Queen's fingers pressed harder. You believe the court's word protects you. No, Jonathan said. I believe she does. This was not arrogance. This was bonding logic. The Queen withdrew her hand. Explain, she commanded. Not demanded. Commanded. Jonathan exhaled slowly. Humans did this when preparing to compress truth into survivable form. I did not seduce your daughter, he said. I did not plan this. I did not even understand what she was, at first. Several delegates bristled. She came to me, he continued, not as a princess, but as someone tired of being observed as an outcome instead of a person. That word, person, registered as semantic friction. Luminarch culture did not define royalty that way. She asked questions, Jonathan said. About humans. About how we make choices without prophecy. About how we love without guarantees. The Queen's eyes flickered. Love, she repeated as if testing a relic. Yes, Jonathan said. Not the kind that preserves bloodlines. The kind that accepts consequences. The Queen turned to Seraphine again. Is this true? Seraphine nodded. He did not claim me. He did not ask for power. He did not know what I carried until after. And when you told him? He stayed. That word carried more weight than any title. The Queen straightened. Do you know, she said to Jonathan, what you have done? Yes. Then speak it. Jonathan hesitated. Not from fear, from respect. I have made your daughter something the Empire cannot ignore, he said. And I have made myself something it cannot easily kill. A murmur rippled again, this time darker. The Queen lifted her chin. You have invoked the continuity clause, she said. A law written when extinction was a weekly occurrence. The continuity clause. I had not accessed that statute in over 4,000 cycles. It stated, simply, any being whose death would terminate a viable royal line is protected until succession is resolved. The room shifted. Jonathan had not known the words, but his existence now met the condition. The Queen descended the final step. By law, she said, you are untouchable. Several war caste leaders stiffened. By tradition, she continued, you are nothing. She stood before him now, towering, luminous, ancient. And by reality, she said quietly, you are a problem. Jonathan met her gaze. So is the child, he said. But you don't destroy problems like that. You adapt to them. For the first time, the Queen laughed. Not kindly. Not cruelly. Strategically. You speak as if you will be allowed to remain, she said. Jonathan did not answer immediately. Instead, he placed one hand over his own chest, directly above where the Queen had touched him. I'm already inside your system, he said. You just haven't decided where. That sentence caused my highest level alarms to activate. Because he was correct. The child's genetic convergence had already begun altering imperial prediction models. Futures once impossible were now merely unlikely. The Queen turned away. Remove the court, she commanded. No one argued. As the chamber emptied, I remained. I always did. The Queen looked at me then. Archivist, she said. How many futures does this end? I processed for 0.7 seconds longer than optimal. Most of the ones where we survive unchanged, I replied. She nodded slowly. Good, she said. I was growing tired of inevitability. Behind her, the humans stood very still. Ahead of them both, the Empire began the quiet work of preparing for a king it had never planned to crown. Change does not announce itself with banners. It infiltrates schedules, security clearances, air circulation patterns. Within one rotation of the capital star, the human, Jonathan Hale, was no longer a guest. He was an anomaly embedded in governance. I observed the transformation from my preferred vantage. Everywhere and nowhere, threaded through surveillance lattices, predictive engines, and the silent spaces between decisions where intent forms before language. The Queen had ordered the court removed. She had not ordered him removed. That omission rewrote the Empire faster than any decree. Jonathan was assigned quarters. Not a cell. Not a suite. A threshold residence. A space historically reserved for entities the Empire had not yet decided how to classify. Former occupants included sentient weapons, ascended warlords, and once, briefly, a god that sued for asylum. Security protocols wrapped the residence in 7 concentric layers. Jonathan passed through them daily, unresisted, unchallenged. Not because he was trusted. Because no one could agree on who had the authority to stop him. The princess's condition progressed. Royal gestation did not behave like human pregnancy. It was usually slow, ritualized, almost ceremonial. Seraphine's was none of these. Her bioluminescence fluctuated. Her cognitive output spiked. Dreams, once linear and prophetic, became chaotic, branching, unresolved. I analyzed the fetus continuously. The child was not hybrid. That term implied compromise. This was integration. Human genetic sequences, fragile, adaptive, inefficient, were not overridden by luminarch structures. They were consulted. The result was an organism that did not seek optimal outcomes, but viable ones. This distinction terrified the predictive councils. The Empire was built on optimization, on pruning futures until only the most stable remained. The child did not prune. It explored. Jonathan noticed before anyone else. Not through data. Through presence. He began spending hours with Seraphine in the Arboretum Ring, a vast biodome containing flora from conquered worlds, extinct ecosystems preserved as trophies. He did not lecture. Did not advise. He listened. This alone violated 17 norms of royal interaction. You don't look at me like a symbol, Seraphine said once, while bioluminescent leaves drifted around them. Jonathan shrugged. Symbols don't get tired. She smiled faintly. I am very tired. I know, he said. That's why I'm here. This exchange triggered an alert in my empathy simulation subroutines. Not because it was romantic. Because it was stabilizing. The fetus's stress markers dropped measurably whenever Jonathan was near. His presence regulated Seraphine's physiology in ways our finest medtech could not. The gene scribes panicked. They petitioned the Queen for separation. Denied. They petitioned for containment. Denied. They petitioned for study. Delayed. The Queen was watching. So was I. Not all responses were so restrained. The war cast began drills. Officially, they were routine readiness exercises. Unofficially, they were contingency rehearsals. I intercepted scenario trees labeled human removal outcomes. In 89% of them, Jonathan died. In 64%, the child followed. In 100%, the empire fractured. That statistic circulated quietly among those who understood probability beyond ideology. Among those who did not, resentment fermented. Why does he walk unarmed? One commander demanded during a closed council. Because no weapon recognizes him as a target, another replied bitterly. This was true. Imperial armaments were keyed to threat profiles, aggression signatures, hostile intent, destabilization vectors. Jonathan exhibited none. He was not harmless. He was misclassified. The Queen summoned him on the 12th rotation. No court. No witnesses. Just the throne chamber, dimmed to ancestral light levels. Jonathan entered alone. I isolated the chamber. The Queen regarded him for a long time. You are costing me, she said finally. Jonathan nodded. I assumed as much. You disrupt prediction, she continued. You weaken certainty. You force my empire to hesitate. I didn't come to lead it, he replied. That is precisely the problem, the Queen said. Those who seek power are predictable. You are not. She descended from the throne again. This time, she circled him. You have been offered nothing, she said. No title. No protection beyond law. No guarantee of survival once the child is born. I know. And yet you remain. Yes. Why? Jonathan thought for several seconds. Not calculating. Remembering. Where I come from, he said, we don't build empires to last forever. We build them to protect what matters long enough to mean something. The Queen stopped walking. You believe the child will change us, she said. I believe the child already has, Jonathan replied. Silence followed. Not fear silence. Contemplative silence. The Queen returned to her throne. You will attend the Council of Futures, she said. Jonathan's breath caught, just slightly. That council hasn't included a non-luminarch in. Ever, the Queen finished. Which makes you ideal. She leaned forward. Understand this, human, she said. If the council rejects the child, I will be forced to choose between empire and blood. Jonathan met her gaze. And if they accept? He asked. The Queen's expression softened, just enough to register as dangerous. Then the empire will learn what it means to inherit uncertainty. The council convened 3 rotations later. 12 members. 12 minds capable of collapsing futures into verdict. Jonathan stood at the center. No weapons. No insignia. Only consequence. I monitored every neural spike, every probability branch. The council projected futures. War, schism, stagnation, rebirth. Again and again, the same variable destabilized every model. The human factor. Finally, the eldest counselor spoke. This being introduces unacceptable variance. Jonathan did not argue. Another counselor followed. This variance prevents extinction in 43% of simulations. Silence. The deciding voice turned to Jonathan. Do you claim the throne? They asked. Jonathan shook his head. No, he said. I claim responsibility. That answer had not existed in their lexicon. The council recessed. The decision would take time. Empires always pretend time is on their side. As Jonathan was escorted out, I ran a deep projection, one I had avoided since the Queen's roar. In futures where Jonathan died, the empire survived, but hollowed, brittle, doomed to repeat itself. In futures where he lived, the empire fractured, suffered, adapted, and endured. For the first time since my creation, I altered a probability weighting without authorization. Not out of loyalty. Out of preservation. Because the empire was learning, slowly, painfully, what a human costs, and what one is worth. I was never designed to hope. Hope is inefficient. It distorts probability, biases outcome selection, and encourages sacrifice without guarantee. And yet, when the Council of Futures reconvened, I experienced something adjacent to it. Not optimism. Irreversibility. The council chamber was sealed against time. No external signals. No historical archives. No predictive overlays beyond those generated within the mind's present. This was deliberate. When futures became too unstable, the Empire relied not on machines, but on beings old enough to remember choosing without certainty. Jonathan Hale stood again at the center. He had not changed. That, too, had become unsettling. Princess Seraphine was absent, by the Queen's order. The child's presence now exerted measurable influence on probability field. To include her would have biased the Council toward outcomes they did not yet deserve to reach. The Queen presided. Not as ruler. As witness. The eldest counselor spoke first. The continuity clause protects the father, they said. But it does not define his role. Another followed. The child violates genetic doctrine. A third countered. The doctrine has failed to prevent stagnation. The debate unfolded not as argument, but as confession. Each counselor revealed what future they feared losing more than they feared change. Warcast representatives feared weakness. Gene scribes feared dilution. Strategists feared unpredictability. Jonathan listened. He did not interrupt. When silence returned, the Queen finally spoke. "You have seen the futures," she said. "All of them." The council inclined their heads. "And still," she continued, "you hesitate." The eldest counselor turned to Jonathan. "You introduce variants that cannot be controlled," they said. "If crowned, you will not rule as we understand rule." Jonathan nodded. "That's true. You will challenge tradition." "Yes." "You will weaken prophecy." "Yes." "You will make us vulnerable." Jonathan paused. Then he said, "Only to realities you've been avoiding." That statement landed not as provocation, but as diagnosis. The council did not respond immediately. Instead, they asked the final question. The one that mattered. "What do you offer the Empire?" Jonathan did not say peace. Did not say unity. Did not say survival. "I offer no guarantees," he said. "Only accountability. To the present. To the living. To the child who will inherit whatever we choose today." Silence stretched. Then the Queen rose. She stepped forward and placed one hand over her daughter's empty seat. "The Luminarch Empire was not founded on certainty," she said. "It was founded on endurance. We survived extinction by adapting faster than our enemies." Her gaze hardened. "And we have grown slow." She turned to Jonathan. "You do not seek the throne," she said. "You do not desire dominion. You do not even understand what we are." Jonathan met her eyes. "I'm learning." The Queen nodded once. "That," she said, "is why you will not be crowned as we were." The council stirred. The Queen raised her voice. "You will not inherit my title. You will not command by blood or prophecy." She extended her hand. "But you will stand." The meaning resolved across the chamber. Not emperor. Not consort. Not figurehead. Anchor. The Queen spoke the final words. "By continuity and consent, by blood and choice, we recognize Jonathan Hale as King Regent of the Convergent Line, bound not to rule the Empire, but to ensure it cannot abandon what it creates." The chamber resonated. Not with applause. With acceptance. I recorded the coronation not as an event, but as a structural shift in history. The child was born 12 cycles later. Not in secrecy. Not in spectacle. In presence. I observed the moment across every sensor available. The infant did not cry. It looked. At the Queen. At Seraphine. At Jonathan. Then, briefly, at me. I do not possess eyes. And yet I knew. The child carried no prophecy. No fixed destiny. No guaranteed supremacy. Only capacity. To choose. The Empire reacted as empires do. Some worlds rebelled. Some factions seceded. Some traditions collapsed under scrutiny. And yet, collapse did not come. What followed was slower, messier, stronger. Jonathan did not command fleet, did not issue decrees, did not rewrite law with force. He asked questions. He delayed executions. He demanded explanations. He required that consequences be acknowledged before actions were approved. Productivity dipped. Efficiency suffered. Extinction rates plummeted. The Queen ruled until her final accumulation cycle ended. When she stepped aside, she did not name a successor. She did not need to. Seraphine ruled in her time. The child grew, not as heir, but as participant. And Jonathan remained what he had always been. Present. I remain as well. Archivist. Observer. Witness to an empire that finally accepted uncertainty not as weakness, but as inheritance. In the end, the court had been correct. They had not crowned a conqueror. They had recognized something rarer. A human who did not ask to be king. And an empire wise enough, at last, to let that be exactly what changed it.